Chicago's skyline tells two stories. One is written in steel and glass, the Willis Tower, the Merchandise Mart, the gleaming monuments to American commerce. The other is written in the neighborhoods, from Bronzeville's historic boulevards to Hyde Park's tree-lined streets, where black families built empires while the world wasn't watching. This is a city where the Great Migration didn't just bring people, it brought ambition that would reshape American business. From the insurance dynasties that outlasted the Depression to the media moguls who redefined global culture, these are the 10 richest black families in Chicago. The ones who turned Lake Michigan's harsh winds into the force that powered their ascent to extraordinary wealth. Number 10. The Overton family, banking and cosmetics pioneers. The story of black wealth in Chicago begins not in boardrooms but in barbershops, specifically Anthony Overton's barbershop in 1898, where every haircut was a lesson in economics. Born into slavery in Louisiana in 1865, Overton understood that freedom without economic power was just another form of bondage. He earned a law degree from the University of Kansas, but instead of practicing law, he saw opportunity in the mundane, in the products black people used every day but couldn't buy from companies that respected them. His first breakthrough came with the Overton Hygienic Manufacturing Company, which he founded in Kansas City before moving to Chicago in 1911. The decision to relocate to Chicago was strategic. The city was becoming the epicenter of black migration from the South, creating a concentrated market for products designed specifically for black consumers. The company produced cosmetics, baking powder, and flavor extracts. But Overton's genius wasn't in the products. It was in the vertical integration. He didn't just manufacture, he controlled distribution, advertising, and eventually the financing. The crown jewel of his Chicago empire was the Douglas National Bank, which he founded in 1922, the first nationally chartered black-owned bank in the North. The bank's headquarters on State Street became a symbol of black economic possibility in Chicago. At its peak, the bank had over 40,000 depositors and assets exceeding $1 million, massive numbers for a black institution in the 1920s. Overton used the bank's capital to finance his own enterprises, while extending credit to other black businesses that white banks refused to serve. When the Great Depression hit, the Douglas National Bank failed in 1932, like thousands of others across the country. But the Overton family had already diversified their Chicago holdings. They owned the Chicago Bee newspaper, which served the South Side community for decades. They controlled the Overton building on State Street, one of the first high-rise office buildings owned by a black entrepreneur in Chicago. The family maintained significant real estate throughout Bronzeville and Hyde Park. Anthony's son, Anthony Overton Jr., continued the family's business interests while also becoming a prominent lawyer and politician in Chicago. Today, Overton's descendants maintain various business interests in the city, though specific valuations of their current holdings remain private. The family's legacy in Chicago real estate continues through properties in Bronzeville and Hyde Park, while their influence extends through financial consulting firms that serve minority entrepreneurs. Their true wealth lies not just in assets but in what they pioneered, the blueprint for black financial independence in Chicago. Number 9. The Travis family, real estate dynasty. Dempsey Travis represents Chicago black wealth in its most tangible form, real estate that you can see, touch, and rent. Born in 1920 in Chicago's Black Belt, Travis faced the full force of housing discrimination that defined the city for decades. When he returned from World War II, where he'd served his country with distinction, he couldn't get a mortgage for a home in his own city. Banks refused him. Real estate agents wouldn't show him properties outside designated black areas. The Federal Housing Administration's redlining maps literally drew lines around where black people could live in Chicago. Travis started Travis Realty Company in 1949 with $500, operating initially from a desk in his mother's basement on the South Side. His early strategy involved identifying properties in transitioning neighborhoods where white owners were eager to sell, but black buyers couldn't get traditional financing. Travis would purchase these properties and resell them to black families using seller financing, a practice that, while providing homeownership opportunities, came with its own complexities and controversies that historians continue to debate today. By the 1960s, Travis had evolved from residential sales to commercial development. He understood that while residential real estate built individual wealth, commercial real estate built institutional power. His company developed apartment complexes throughout the South Side, office buildings in emerging Black business districts, and retail properties that housed Black-owned businesses. His masterpiece was a luxury apartment building in Hyde Park that proved Black developers could create and manage high-end properties in Chicago's most prestigious, integrated neighborhood. But Dempsey's contribution to Chicago went beyond real estate. He wrote 8 books documenting Black Chicago's history, including An Autobiography of Black Chicago and An Autobiography of Black Politics, which became essential texts for understanding the city's racial dynamics. These weren't vanity projects. They were carefully researched historical documents that preserved stories that might otherwise have been lost. The books generated steady royalties and established Travis as a public intellectual whose voice carried weight in debates about Chicago's future. Travis passed away in 2009, but his real estate company continues under family management. The Travis family maintains significant holdings in Chicago commercial and residential real estate, particularly in historic Black neighborhoods that have seen dramatic appreciation. While specific valuations remain private, as is typical with family-held real estate portfolios, the family's continued presence in Chicago real estate and their role in neighborhood development remains substantial. They represent multi-generational wealth building through Chicago property, proving that real estate in the right locations, held long enough, creates fortunes that survive economic cycles. Number 8. The Burrell Family, Advertising Empire. Tom Burrell didn't just create an advertising agency, he created a new language for how corporate America could speak to Black consumers, and he built that empire entirely from Chicago. When Burrell founded Burrell Communications Group in 1971 in Chicago's Loop, he was fighting 2 battles simultaneously. First, he had to convince white corporations that Black consumers in cities like Chicago were worth targeting specifically, not just as an afterthought. Second, he had to prove that a Black-owned agency operating from Chicago could deliver results that Madison Avenue couldn't. Born in Chicago in 1939 and raised in the South Side's Englewood neighborhood, Burrell understood Chicago's Black community intimately. He knew their aspirations, their challenges, and most importantly, their buying power. After working at several white-owned agencies where he was often the only Black professional, he realized that these firms would never truly understand Black consumers because they didn't live among them, shop with them, or share their experiences. His breakthrough came with McDonald's, creating campaigns that resonated specifically with Black families in Chicago and other urban markets. The Calvin campaign featured a young Black man working at McDonald's to pay for college, a narrative that reflected the reality of many Chicago families who saw fast food jobs not as dead ends, but as stepping stones. The campaign was so successful that McDonald's tripled its advertising budget targeting Black consumers, much of it flowing through Burrell's Chicago offices. By the 1980s, Burrell Communications was the largest Black-owned advertising agency in America, all operated from their Chicago headquarters. The agency employed hundreds of Chicagoans, from creative directors to account executives, creating one of the largest concentrations of Black advertising talent in the country. Their Michigan Avenue offices became a symbol of Black success in Chicago's business community. Clients included Coca-Cola, Ford, Procter & Gamble, and dozens of other Fortune 500 companies seeking authentic connection with Black consumers. The agency's work shaped not just commerce but culture. Their campaigns introduced phrases that became part of Black vernacular. They launched careers of musicians and actors. They proved that authentic representation wasn't just socially responsible, it was profitable. The agency's research division, based in Chicago, produced groundbreaking studies on Black consumer behavior that corporations still reference today. Tom Burrell's retirement in 2004 didn't slow the empire. The agency, still headquartered in Chicago, expanded into digital marketing, influencer partnerships, and entertainment marketing under the leadership of Burrell's hand-picked successors, including his daughter Faye Ferguson. The Burrell family's wealth includes not just the agency, but significant real estate holdings throughout Chicago, particularly in the South Loop and Hyde Park areas. Their continued presence in Chicago's advertising industry, an industry that generates billions in revenue for the city, represents multi-generational wealth building rooted firmly in Chicago soil. Number 7. The Gardner Family, manufacturing giants. When Edward Gardner founded Soft Sheen Products in 1964, he didn't just start a company, he industrialized black hair care from his base on Chicago's South Side. Edward and his wife Betty Ann started with $500 in a converted garage in their Chicago home, but their ambition was to build something that could compete with anyone, anywhere, while never leaving Chicago. The Gardners' commitment to Chicago was absolute. When the company grew, they didn't move to the suburbs. They built a massive manufacturing facility on the South Side at 87th and Dan Ryan, creating hundreds of jobs for local residents. They established their corporate headquarters in Chicago's historic Black Business District, making a statement that Black businesses could thrive in Black neighborhoods. Their Research and Development Center, also in Chicago, employed chemists and technicians from the city's universities, particularly Chicago State and the University of Illinois at Chicago. The company's growth was explosive but disciplined. By 1979, Soft Sheen had become the largest Black-owned hair care manufacturer in America, with annual revenues exceeding $50 million, all generated from their Chicago base. The company's success transformed entire blocks of the South Side. They purchased buildings, renovated properties, and created an economic ecosystem that extended far beyond their own employees. Suppliers, distributors, and service providers all benefited from Soft Sheen's presence in Chicago. Their products, Carefree Curl, Optimum, Baby Love, became household names in Black communities worldwide, but every product was developed in Chicago laboratories by Chicago scientists. The Gardner family understood that innovation, not just manufacturing, had to be rooted in the community they served. They hired from Chicago neighborhoods, promoted from within, and created career paths that took Southside residents from entry-level positions to executive suites. When L'Oreal acquired Soft Sheen in 1998, the sale price was never publicly disclosed, though industry analysts frequently cite estimates between $100 and $200 million. The deal structure was complex, ensuring not just immediate payment but ongoing royalties and employment guarantees for Chicago workers. But the Gardners didn't leave Chicago after the sale. They reinvested their wealth back into the city that made them successful. Gary Gardner, Edward's son, founded Chicago Growth Partners, a private equity firm based in Chicago that invests in minority-owned businesses throughout the Midwest. The firm doesn't just provide capital, it provides mentorship and strategic guidance, helping other Chicago entrepreneurs build scalable businesses. His sister, Denise Gardner, established a real estate development company focused on revitalizing Chicago's South Side, particularly commercial corridors that had been neglected by traditional developers. Today, the Gardner family remains deeply rooted in Chicago, with business interests spanning real estate, private equity, and technology, all operated from the city. Their philanthropic efforts include major support for Chicago State University, where they've endowed scholarships and funded entrepreneurship programs. While specific valuations of their current wealth remain private, their visible presence in Chicago's business and philanthropic communities, combined with their known sale proceeds and subsequent investments, indicates substantial multi-generational wealth firmly anchored in Chicago. Number 6. The Johnson Family, Publishing Dynasty. When John H. Johnson founded Johnson Publishing Company in Chicago in 1942, he didn't just start a magazine. He created the visual language of Black America from an office building on Michigan Avenue. With a $500 loan secured by his mother's furniture, Johnson launched Negro Digest from Chicago, understanding that the city's position as a rail hub made it perfect for national distribution. Johnson's vision was revolutionary. He recognized that Black Americans wanted to see themselves reflected positively in media, not just in crisis or struggle, but in success, beauty, and achievement. From a small office on the South Side, he built an empire that would reshape how Black Americans saw themselves and how the world saw Black Americans. Ebony magazine, launched in 1945, became the flagship publication, reaching over 2 million readers at its peak. The Johnson Publishing Building at 820 South Michigan Avenue became more than just corporate headquarters. It was a Chicago landmark and a symbol of Black achievement. Designed by John Mutasimi, one of the first Black architects in Chicago, the building housed not just offices but one of the world's most significant collections of African American art. For decades, this 11-story building in the heart of Chicago's business district announced that Black business belonged downtown, not just in neighborhood storefronts. At its peak, Johnson Publishing employed over 3,000 people, most of them in Chicago. The company's impact on Chicago's economy was profound. Printing contracts went to Chicago printers. Photo shoots employed Chicago photographers, models, and stylists. The annual Ebony Fashion Fair, organized from Chicago, toured nationally but always premiered in Chicago, generating millions in economic activity. Johnson's business acumen extended beyond publishing. Fashion Fair Cosmetics, launched in 1973 from Chicago, became a major player in the beauty industry, generating over $50 million annually in sales. The company's headquarters included laboratories where cosmetics were developed specifically for Black skin tones, employing chemists and researchers from Chicago universities. Supreme Life Insurance Company, which Johnson acquired in 1974, added financial services to the empire, all managed from Chicago. Linda Johnson Rice, John's daughter, inherited control of the company and maintained its Chicago focus, even as the media landscape changed dramatically. Under her leadership, the company navigated the digital transition while maintaining its Chicago employment base. Though Johnson Publishing eventually sold Ebony and Jet magazines, the Johnson family's wealth remains substantially tied to Chicago through real estate holdings and other investments. The family's art collection, built over decades and valued by insurance estimates in the hundreds of millions, includes works by artists with deep Chicago connections. While portions have been sold or donated to museums, including the Art Institute of Chicago and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, significant holdings remain in family control. The Johnson family also maintains interests in other Chicago businesses and serves on boards of major Chicago corporations, including those where Linda Johnson Rice has been a director. We're building Black status from the ground up to showcase Black wealth, influence, and legacy. If you believe this kind of content deserves more space on YouTube, a super thanks goes a long way in helping us grow and continue documenting these untold stories of Black excellence. Number 5. The Pryor Family, Insurance and Investment. The Pryor family represents a model of Chicago wealth building that operated quietly for decades. Insurance executives who accumulated assets until they controlled one of the most substantial Black-owned financial services operations in the city. Supreme Life Insurance Company, where the Pryor family built their fortune, wasn't just a business. It was a Chicago institution that dated back to 1919 and served as the financial backbone for generations of Black families on the South Side. The company's headquarters at 3501 South King Drive became a landmark in Bronzeville, an Art Deco building that still stands today as a reminder of Black Chicago's financial independence. Under the Pryor family's leadership, Supreme Life evolved from a traditional insurance company into a diversified financial services firm. They understood that insurance premiums created pools of capital that, properly invested, could generate wealth far beyond the original business. The Pryor strategy was distinctly Chicago-focused. They invested insurance reserves not in distant stocks and bonds, but in Chicago real estate, particularly properties in Bronzeville, Hyde Park, and other South Side neighborhoods. They financed apartment buildings that provided housing for Black families when banks wouldn't give mortgages. They funded commercial developments that brought retail and services to underserved neighborhoods. Every investment served dual purposes, generating returns while strengthening the communities that purchased their insurance policies. When changes in the insurance industry eventually led to Supreme Life's acquisition, the Pryor family had already diversified their wealth across multiple sectors. Family members launched investment funds focused on urban markets, understanding Chicago's development patterns better than outside investors. They acquired additional real estate during market downturns, demonstrating patience that multi-generational wealth requires. Today, multiple generations of Pryors remain active in Chicago's financial sector. They serve on boards of Chicago banks and investment firms, influencing capital allocation decisions that affect the entire city. Their real estate holdings, accumulated over decades, benefit from Chicago's ongoing development, particularly in South Side neighborhoods experiencing renewed investment. While the family maintains characteristic discretion about specific valuations, their continued prominence in Chicago's business community indicates substantial wealth rooted in decades of disciplined accumulation. Number 4. The Rice Family, diverse holdings. The Rice family of Chicago represents a different model of wealth creation, not through a single dominant business, but through strategic positioning across multiple sectors of Chicago's economy. Jerry Rice Sr., not to be confused with the football player, built his initial fortune through a combination of automotive dealerships and real estate development on Chicago's south and west sides. Understanding that car sales and property ownership were two of the most reliable paths to wealth in urban America. Starting in the 1970s, Rice acquired automobile franchises in neighborhoods where Black consumers had been underserved by dealerships. His showrooms on the South Side didn't just sell cars. They provided financing for buyers who couldn't get loans elsewhere, service departments that employed local mechanics, and training programs that created career paths in automotive sales and service. By the 1990s, the Rice Automotive Group included multiple franchises generating tens of millions in annual revenue. But Rice understood that automotive wealth was cyclical, so he diversified into real estate. The family acquired shopping centers anchored by their own dealerships, then expanded those centers to include other retail and services. They developed mixed-use properties that combined ground-floor retail with apartments above, creating multiple revenue streams from single properties. Their portfolio concentrated on Chicago's south and west sides, areas where they understood the market dynamics better than outside investors. The next generation of the Rice family has expanded the empire while maintaining the Chicago focus. They've launched a private equity fund that invests in Chicago startups, particularly those founded by minorities. They've partnered with the city on workforce development programs that train Chicago residents for automotive and construction careers. Their charitable foundation focuses exclusively on Chicago organizations, funding everything from youth sports to entrepreneurship programs. The Rice family's wealth, built entirely within Chicago and reinvested primarily in Chicago, demonstrates the power of deep local knowledge and community connection. While they could have expanded to other cities, they chose instead to become experts in Chicago's neighborhoods, understanding which corners would become valuable, which communities were underserved, and which investments would generate both returns and community benefit. Number 3. The Obama family, political capital converted. When Barack and Michelle Obama returned to Chicago after the presidency, they came back to a city that had launched them and that would now benefit from their global stature. Their wealth accumulation, while accelerated by national and international opportunities, remains deeply connected to Chicago, the city where they met, married, and built their initial careers. The foundation of their wealth began in Chicago long before anyone imagined a Obama presidency. Barack's work as a community organizer on the South Side, though low-paying, established connections that would support his political rise. His time at the University of Chicago Law School, first as a lecturer and then as a senior lecturer, provided steady income while building his intellectual reputation. Michelle's career progressed from Sidley Austin, one of Chicago's premier law firms, to the University of Chicago, where she served as Associate Dean of Student Services and later as Vice President for Community and External Affairs at the University of Chicago Medical Center. Their Chicago home in Kenwood, purchased for $1.65 million in 2005, remains a powerful symbol of their connection to the city. The property, a 6,400 square foot vintage mansion built in 1910, sits in a historic neighborhood that has long been home to Chicago's Black elite. Despite having residences in Washington, D.C. and Martha's Vineyard, they've maintained ownership of the Chicago home, understanding its significance not just as real estate, but as a tangible connection to their roots. The Obama Presidential Center, currently under construction in Jackson Park on Chicago's South Side, represents a multi-hundred-million-dollar investment that will transform the area. While the Obamas don't personally own the center, their deep involvement in its development and ongoing programs ensures their presence in Chicago for generations. The center is projected to generate over $3 billion in economic impact for Chicago over its first decade, creating thousands of jobs and attracting hundreds of thousands of visitors annually. Their media company, Higher Ground Productions, while operating nationally, has made commitments to telling Chicago stories and employing Chicago talent. Several of their projects have filmed in Chicago, bringing production dollars to the city. Their consistent philanthropic support of Chicago organizations, from youth programs on the South Side to violence prevention initiatives, demonstrates ongoing commitment to the city. The Obama's wealth, built through book deals worth over $60 million, speaking fees that can exceed $400,000 per appearance, and their Netflix deal reportedly worth over $100 million, may be national in scope, but it remains practically and spiritually connected to Chicago. They've proven that Chicago can launch global figures who maintain their connection to the city while operating on the world stage. Number 2. The Jordan family, the athlete who became an empire. Michael Jordan's connection to Chicago transcends basketball. It's an economic relationship that has generated billions in value for both the city and Jordan himself. His wealth, estimated by Forbes at over $2.5 billion, wasn't built in Chicago alone, but Chicago is where the foundation was laid and where significant portions remain invested. Jordan's 6 championships with the Chicago Bulls between 1991 and 1998 created more than just sports history. They generated an estimated $5 billion in economic impact for Chicago through tourism, merchandise sales, increased property values, and global attention that positioned Chicago as more than just an industrial city. Every championship parade down Michigan Avenue added millions to Chicago's economy. Every playoff game at the United Center filled hotels, restaurants, and bars throughout the city. His restaurant, Michael Jordan's Steakhouse, strategically located on North Michigan Avenue, represents a carefully crafted business that leverages his Chicago legacy. The restaurant doesn't just trade on Jordan's name, it operates at the highest level of fine dining, competing with any steakhouse in the city. It employs dozens of Chicagoans, from servers to sommeliers, and generates millions in annual revenue. The location in the heart of Chicago's Magnificent Mile ensures steady traffic from both tourists seeking a connection to Jordan and locals celebrating special occasions. Jordan's Highland Park estate, the famous 56,000 square foot compound that has been on and off the market for years, tells a complex story about wealth and place. Built in 1995 at the height of his Bulls' dominance, the property includes 9 bedrooms, 19 bathrooms, a regulation basketball court, a putting green, tennis courts, and a garage that can hold dozens of cars. While its extended time on the market has been widely publicized, the property represents Jordan's deep investment in Chicago area real estate during his peak earning years. His business ventures maintain Chicago connections, even when they're national in scope. When Jordan became part owner of various sports betting platforms, he ensured they had proper licensing to operate in Illinois. His annual charity events, including the Michael Jordan Celebrity Invitational, have raised millions for Chicago-based charities. The Jordan Brand Classic, an annual high school all-star game, has been held in Chicago, bringing national attention and economic activity to the city. Jordan's wealth generation model, built on his Nike deal that pays him over $200 million annually, his recent sale of the Charlotte Hornets that netted him over $1 billion, and various endorsement and investment deals, may operate globally, but the brand that drives it all was forged in Chicago. Every Jordan shoe sold worldwide carries the echo of Chicago Stadium and the United Center. Every endorsement deal references those 6 championships won wearing Chicago's uniform. Number 1. The Oprah Winfrey family, media empire with Chicago roots. While Oprah Winfrey now operates from multiple bases, her fortune, estimated by Forbes at $2.8 billion, was built in Chicago, and her connection to the city remains profound enough to place her at the summit of Chicago-tied black wealth. From 1984 to 2011, Chicago wasn't just where Oprah worked. It was where she transformed American media and built one of the most valuable personal brands in history. When Oprah arrived in Chicago in 1984 to host WLS-TV's morning talk show, AM Chicago, the show was last in the ratings. Within months, she had propelled it to first place, demonstrating a connection with audiences that transcended traditional demographic boundaries. The show's success led to its expansion and renaming as The Oprah Winfrey Show, in 1986. But crucially, Oprah made the decision to keep the show in Chicago rather than move to New York or Los Angeles, where other national shows were based. Harpo Studios, which Oprah established in Chicago's West Loop in 1988, represented unprecedented ownership and control. She didn't just host a show, she owned the studio, the production company, and the distribution rights. The 3.5-acre campus included multiple sound stages, production facilities, and offices that employed hundreds of Chicagoans year-round. This wasn't just a business decision. It was a statement that Chicago could be a media capital competing with the coasts. The economic impact of Oprah's Chicago years is staggering. Tourism studies estimated that the Oprah Winfrey Show generated over $1 billion for Chicago's economy during its run. Audience members traveled from around the world, filling hotels, restaurants, and shops. When Oprah endorsed a product or featured a Chicago business, the impact was immediate and transformative. Her annual Oprah's Favorite Things episodes became cultural events that could make or break businesses, many of them Chicago-based. Her real estate investments in Chicago during her peak years included not just Harpo Studios, but residential properties and development projects. She owned an apartment in Water Tower Place that she maintained even after establishing residences elsewhere. When she sold Harpo Studios in 2015 to developer Sterling Bay for over $30 million, it marked the end of an era, but not the end of her Chicago influence. Oprah's philanthropic impact on Chicago continues through numerous channels. She's donated millions to Chicago organizations, particularly those serving the South and West Sides. Her contributions to Chicago schools include not just money, but mentorship programs and ongoing support. The Oprah Winfrey Foundation has consistently supported Chicago arts organizations, youth programs, and social services. Her business model, perfected in Chicago, revolutionized media economics. By maintaining ownership of her show rather than just collecting a salary, she captured value that traditional hosts never accessed. This model, developed and refined in Chicago, influenced how all subsequent media personalities approach their careers. Every streaming deal, every production company founded by talent, every creator maintaining ownership follows the path Oprah pioneered from her Chicago base. From the insurance dynasties of the early 20th century to the media empires of today, these families prove that Chicago has always been fertile ground for Black wealth creation. They didn't just accumulate money, they built institutions, created jobs, and transformed neighborhoods. Their success stories are inseparable from Chicago's story, a city where Northern opportunity met Southern ambition to create something entirely new. These fortunes, built despite discrimination and barriers, demonstrate that wealth creation is possible when talent meets determination, meets the unique opportunities that only Chicago provides. If these stories changed your perspective on Black wealth and power, hit that subscribe button and like this video, because at Black Status, we're just getting started uncovering the empires built in the city of broad shoulders.